time we bring you I'm Right tomorrow night, it will be stamped, signed, sealed, delivered. Trump will have indictment number 4 coming on him. I am sad to say I was right. That was me last night. It wasn't exactly a bold or amazing prediction. Anyone could see it coming. It obviously came down today. Donald Trump, 18 co-conspirators being charged with 41 charges. Now, I saw this coming. You saw this coming. That doesn't make us geniuses. It makes us people who understand where we are, what kind of country we have now. Look, I called this back in 2022. Here I was. Remember, I'm not your mommy. It's not my job to powder your butt for you and tell you everything will be okay. I am America's daddy, so I'm about to tell you how it is. They're going to indict Donald Trump. They're almost undoubtedly going to indict Donald Trump and arrest Donald Trump, and the chances are not zero that that arrest of Donald Trump comes on television. And they already came out today and bragged that there will be a Trump mugshot in Fulton County, Georgia. Now, why did you see this coming? Why did I see this coming? Not because of what's happening now, because of history. Because I understand who and what we're dealing with, and I'm sad to say the low-T GOP does not have that understanding. I understand that we're not dealing with leftists, liberals, progressives. We are dealing with committed communists. We are dealing with people who will destroy all, burn all, arrest all, hurt all, kill all, because that's what communists do. Fannie Willis, the DA in this thing, she's not a progressive. She's not a soft-on-crime prosecutor. She's an apparatchik. She's a communist foot soldier. She's the tip of the spear. That's what she is, and that's how she sees herself. You ever heard of the name Lev Kamenev? Ever heard of the name? And the reason I bring him up is this. I've seen a lot of people, and I know this is just trying to cope with a horrible situation, saying things like, this is so ridiculous. The charges are ridiculous. Oh, it's crazy. Supreme Court's going to throw it all out. This is crazy. These are ridiculous. Almost like a laughing it off thing. Well, yeah, of course the charges are ridiculous. Why do you think that changes anything? Anyway, Lev Kamenev, he was a committed communist too, so don't feel bad about the guy. But he came up with Stalin and Lenin when there was that whole Russian Revolution thing. And Lev Kamenev was very popular. He was popular in the party. He was popular, and then he ended up having kind of a falling out with Stalin after Stalin took over. Anyway, that's not important. The important part is this. Stalin decided Lev Kamenev had to go. That's it. He was too popular. Stalin didn't like his popularity, and he decided Lev Kamenev had to go. So he arrested Lev Kamenev, framed him for an assassination that Lev Kamenev took no part in whatsoever. He was charged with that, conspiring to assassinate somebody, even though he had nothing to do with it. The charges were ridiculous. Only the difference between the Soviets then and us now is the Soviets then understood that, yes, the charges were ridiculous, but it's not a laughing matter because the end has already been written. The trial was scripted, written. The judges, the sentencing, the everything. The Soviets understood they lived in an evil country, an evil system, and once the system grabs you, it's over. This Trump story is heartbreaking, and it's awful, and I hate it, and you hate it, and it's terrible for the country. But don't hang on to some ridiculous false hope that I see some people selling out there. The end has been written. Don't be banking on the Supreme Court. Don't be banking on the jury seeing how ridiculous this is. These are the Moscow show trials. Lev Kamenev was, of course, convicted, as he knew he would be. Lev Kamenev even ended up confessing, even though he was innocent, trying to save the life of his family in vain. He was lined up against the wall and shot. His entire family, except for his youngest son, they were also killed as well. But none of it shocked the Soviets, the Soviet people. because they understood their government was wholly evil, and ridiculous charges weren't laughed off. They were simply accepted as what was going to be a vehicle to get rid of political opponents. It saddens me that that's the country we live in, but that's why I've been able to predict all this stuff, and that's why you have as well. This is what evil communist governments do. Here's communist foot soldier Fani Willis from today.
Earlier today, there was a fictitious document, according to the Fulton County Clerk's Office, that was circulated online with charges against former President Donald Trump. That fictitious document matched exactly the charges that we now see in this indictment. Can you tell us more about that document leak?
No, I can't tell you anything about what you refer to. I am not an expert on clerks' duties or even administrative duties. I wouldn't know how to work that system, and so I'm not going to speculate. Next question.
Fictitious document. You hear how he put it? There was a fictitious document that just so happened to match all the exact same charges that were announced today. Joining me now, Cornell Law professor, founder of Legal Insurrection, Bill Jacobson. Okay, Bill, what irregularities, I guess I'll put it in a very political term, what irregularities are you seeing with this whole Atlanta mess we've got going?
Well, I think what you just witnessed on the clip you showed is the smugness and the arrogance of people who think they have absolute power and can employ it with impunity. And that's what really is shocking about what's happening in Georgia. By contrast, Jack Smith, who I think has been accused of the same thing, was relatively sedate compared to what went on in Georgia. I mean, they're already announcing, we're putting his mugshot out there. They're going to turn it into a circus. They have thrown the kitchen sink, not just at Donald Trump, but at 18 people who surround him, and put 30 people on some level of notice that they're unindicted co-conspirators. So what's going on in Georgia is very different than even Jack Smith has done in Miami and DC.
You said it looks like they can just, well, they act like they can do what they want with impunity, but can't they? I mean, that's the dangerous situation we're in, whether we're in New York City with Alvin Bragg or Jack Smith in DC or Fani Willis in Atlanta. These Democrat hotbeds are places where they do control every lever of power and can do whatever they want and charge people with ridiculous things. Can they not? I mean, what's to stop them?
Well, there's very little, and that's why they act the way they act, and that's why they do what they do. There is no check and balance at the state level in deep blue cities and deep blue states. Remember, these Alvin Bragg and Fani Willis are two local prosecutors. Now, Alvin Bragg's is a stale 7-year-old claim. Put that aside. But Fani Willis is charging a major presidential candidate with election fraud for a federal election, not a state election, not a local election, for which he is already being charged by the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice. This is piling on. This is trying to create a backstop that if for some reason Jack Smith is not successful, that she will be there waiting to get Trump and the people around him. This is very dangerous stuff. And this is, as you indicate, they can in fact get away with it. I mean, the Attorney General of New York, who's not involved in these cases, ran on a platform of not only getting Donald Trump, but getting his family. And they get away with it in these deep blue states. But what happens in the deep blue states has national implications, as we're seeing.
Bill, Trump's lawyer had this response as the indictments were coming down.
This is ridiculous that the cameras are even watching this right now, frankly. I mean, it's unprofessional, it's unethical, and it's un-American. It is part of the show. This is a show. It's a political show. Fanny, I can do TV too. It is not okay what you are doing. This is unacceptable. The fact that we have cameras.
Okay, Bill, she looks worried. What, if you're Trump's lawyer or just a concerned citizen, which of these cases should genuinely worry you the most, or are they all worrisome? I don't see how he gets out of any of these because of the despicable system he's involved in.
Yeah, I think they should all worry him. I've written since last March that the one that should worry Donald Trump the most was the Miami case, the records case, because it was the least convoluted legal theory. And here you've got a RICO claim in Georgia. You've got in DC, you've got similar sort of conspiracy claims, which might be subject, probably on appeal, to attack as insufficient. But of course, that's after a trial's taken place. So yes, I think Trump is in a lot of legal difficulty, but it's even more. And this is why qualitatively, what Fani Willis is doing is so different. She's named 18 people. She's indicated there's 30 unindicted co-conspirators, which means they could be added to the case later on. She is attempting to freeze the Trump wing of the Republican Party, which is about half of the party. She's attempting to freeze them. We saw this happen in Wisconsin several years ago with the John Doe investigations, where a Democrat local prosecutor using the Wisconsin John Doe law, which no longer exists in that form anymore, essentially froze the entire conservative movement by making so many people targets of the investigation. People stopped talking to each other. People stopped doing normal political behavior because they were afraid. And that's what Fani Willis is doing. And that's very different than what even Jack Smith has done. Jack Smith named Donald Trump, and that's it. Fani Willis is spreading out throughout the Trump wing of the party and making it known that there may be more to come. And so she's freezing political activity. She's freezing lawful political activity because people will be afraid to communicate with each other.
Bill, whenever I bring up this trouble that he's in and how ugly this is going to be, inevitably someone will say, well, the Supreme Court's going to get rid of all of this. I'm not a legal expert like you are. How much faith should I have that of these 4 different indictments, the Supreme Court's just going to laugh them all off and toss them, assuming that he's found guilty of all of them?
Well, I think you have to take them one at a time. And I think that the one that's most susceptible to being reversed by the Supreme Court would be the one that's in the District of Columbia and also the Manhattan one. The Manhattan one is essentially a concocted legal theory that I think a federal court at the end of the process would throw out. Same with the one in D.C. It's the novel application of various laws to a political election, I think, is susceptible. The Georgia one's going to be tough because it's going to go through the state court system. It's going to be years before it reaches the Supreme Court. And by throwing so many things into one case, there are discrete pieces of the Georgia case which could have very easily been charged separately, like supposedly breaking into a computer system. If that was done, that could have been charged 2 years ago, but they waited till now. And so I think he's in a lot of legal trouble. And I've been saying this on my website for a while, and people, attack that. But hey, I live in the real world, and the real world is telling us that Donald Trump is in a lot of legal problems. He's probably going to get convicted in one or more of these cases. And people need to wake up, and people need to understand what's happening. And people also need to understand that, while he is not to blame for the hyper-partisan actions of the prosecutors, he left himself very vulnerable. He handed a lot of this stuff to them on a silver platter, and they are now exploiting it. And it's a bad situation. And now he's going to roll out, apparently Monday, a new report about Georgia election fraud. I mean, are you kidding me? It's 2.5 years later. What is the end game here? And Trump supporters don't seem to understand. What is your end game? There is no process to decertify an election that took place 2.5 years ago. The way you stop this growing totalitarianism is to win the next election. But everything they're doing is set up to lose the next election. You've got to win the next election, because Fani Willis and Alvin Bragg and Jack Smith are just the first of a wave of totalitarian attacks using the law enforcement and prosecutorial powers of the state that's coming our way.
Golly. Thank you for a sobering message we all needed to hear, Bill. Come back soon. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
I have great news. If you enjoyed that, I have a YouTube channel you can subscribe to. Whatever I do, it'll be right there on YouTube. So go subscribe today.